The world owes you nothing. So never be comfortable, always be curious, always imagine your ideal future 5 years out. How do you reimagine your business or your business model or your offering so that it sets you entirely apart from the competition, so that no one else does what you do in the way you do it? That why do we compete? Because we're running hard, looking over our shoulder, trying to be a little bit better than the next guy. It's tough, it really is. The biggest spatial problem in South Africa post-apartheid is, black people were put far out, economic opportunities were in different places. It's kind of crazy. Let's pause. Let's all write down what kind of country we want our children to grow up in. And suddenly, no matter where you were on the political spectrum, everybody had the same answer. Yeah.
What is the future of education?
If you do coffee shop management as a subject at school, you have to know, well, where do coffee beans grow? That's geography. How do you optimize the yield of your coffee bean plant? That is biology and nature. How do you price your coffee to make a profit? That's maths. How do you sell the coffee? Well, that's psychology and language maybe, and so on. And so you understand the interrelatedness between all these things.
Why are you still here? Why are you still coming back here?
And I love this place.
Welcome everybody. I have an amazing guest today. His name is Anton Musgrave. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself right now because I'm not going to get everything correct. He has worked with Coca-Cola. He has worked with HSSB. I think I got it right. He's worked with the Hong Kong government.
Yeah.
Welcome, Anton.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
You have done some pretty amazing things with the amount of work that you've done out there. What has been the highlight of your career so far?
Look, I think the highlight has been the diversity of conversations I've had with leaders around the world. As you say, from the leadership of the Hong Kong government a number of years ago, which was an interesting conversation because in those days, Hong Kong was the only access point for the whole of the West into China. In fact, if you remember the old Hong Kong airport, you flew down in between the buildings, and those were the Chinese factories, actually, in those days. Wow. And so the question for Hong Kong was, how do we stay relevant to the Western world whilst China is taking over Hong Kong as we know it's done? Yes. How do we reimagine the future of Hong Kong? Fascinating conversation. I do strategic thinking sessions with the police service in India, for example. Wow. Conversations around how do we create a relevance in a country of 1.45 billion people that's massively diverse with huge disparity in wealth? And how do you as a police force think about your future? Wow. What is that society going to need? What does it want to look like? And what role do you play? And then, of course, the obvious conversations in boardrooms of corporations around the world is how do we grow? How do we stay relevant? How do we avoid disruption by the young upstart entrepreneurs? So to me, the diversity of conversation is probably the highlight. I mean, it means no day is boring.
Wow. So let's backtrack a bit. I think that you are the current CEO of Future World, if I'm correct.
I'm a co-founder of Future World.
Co-founder of Future World. So let's backtrack a bit. How did you get here? How did we get here? Because you're a futurist now, trained as a lawyer. How did we get here?
The story started way back in 1989 in a dentist chair, believe it or not. I'm petrified of dentists. I was trying to read something to take my mind off the tooth extraction. Yes. Found an article in a magazine on the reception table that told me about the internet in 1989. And my mind said to me, Anton, I've never heard of this thing called the internet, but if this article is true, the world will never be the same. And it sparked a curiosity about what the internet was actually all about in those days. It seems obvious today. But also a fear. And the fear was that if I haven't heard about this thing that might shape my future, what else have I not heard about? Yeah. And so that started my journey into the future, as it were. While still practicing law, I became more and more involved in what is now the business called Future World. I mean, I became a client of theirs to help me understand the future of the internet on professional services. And that journey started a friendship. It triggered an invitation to join the business, which I turned down. I said, look, I really enjoy being a lawyer, but can I come and do what you do part-time? And they were lateral thinking enough to say, yes, of course. Wow. And that started the journey.
Wow, when that's really that's an amazing story. When people hear futurist, all they're hearing is genie ball, predictions.
Yeah.
But I think that futurism is not about that. And can you unpack that for me?
Well, if a futurist thinks it's about the crystal ball, you should run a mile. Because anyone that thinks they can predict the future with any degree of certainty is spinning you a yarn. I mean, that's it. So, and the other thing futurism is not about is it's not about trends, in my opinion. Because trends exist today. You can observe them. You can see the trend shifting from position A to position B. You know, Zara fashion, for example, analyzed trends in real time. Green is selling really well this week. Let's go and produce more green. Yeah. That's a trend, and that's what I call relevant to the business of today.
Wow.
But what we do as futurists and as business strategists is to say, what are the signals that the future is sending us? Some of them loud, some of them tiny. Yeah. How do we connect these signals and then synthesize the message into something that makes sense for a business? Something that tells us what the future might be. And of course, there are many possible futures. So what might these futures all be? How do we then understand a more likely future scenario? How do we monitor these signals to see whether they're actually delivering the future that we anticipated or not? And how do we respond? How do we avoid the risks? But more importantly, from my perspective, is how do we capitalize on the opportunities? Because when you talk opportunity, people get excited. You know, when you talk risk management, I go to sleep.
Yeah.
You know?
So I like that. Then the question is, how? How do we identify those signals? How do we? Yeah. I'm a business owner. How do I see those signals and identify them? And what do I do about it?
Well, look, business happens in a context, right? Business doesn't happen in a void. Customers live in an environment, they have issues, business employs people, they have issues, business produces widgets, the production has issues, etc. And all of that takes place in an environment. It's your community, it's your city, it's your province, your country, the world, right? So if you're looking for a sort of a structured process, start with understanding the context. And then the typical pestle is probably quite clear. For those that don't understand, it's what is the political environment in your marketplace? What is the environmental issues in your marketplace? What are the technologies applying or relevant to your marketplace, to your industry, etc.? And who are your customers? Well, we'll talk about customers in a moment. So what is the broad canvas in which your business takes place? Understand that through those lenses. Wow. But then move it up a notch and say to yourself, what is the marketplace in which I operate in the future? All right? So remember, futurism is about the future. So yes, you know your current market. You should know it anyway. But what marketplace are you moving towards? Wow. So who are your customers of tomorrow? How will they behave? What will they value? Yeah. What will they take for granted? Yeah. Simple example. If today's children are going to be your customers of tomorrow, they take speed for granted. They take simplicity for granted. Yes. They take quality for granted. So those are not differentiators. Yeah. So in your new business idea, you'd better design it in such a way that it's simple to engage and you can respond fast. Wow. Because if you can't, you don't even get an entry ticket to the game. Wow. So what are your future customers? Then you've got to say to yourself, in the future, what industries are likely to succeed? What industries are likely to die off, become commoditized, disappear even? Wow. And what does that mean for my business model? And so you start forming a picture in your mind about the marketplace in which your business of tomorrow will trade and operate successfully. Wow. What will customers tomorrow love? What will they hate? What will they absolutely demand? And what will create distinction for what you do, set you apart from the rest? And here's an interesting lesson I've learned over the years. I think the world's becoming so competitive that why do we compete? Because we're running hard, looking over our shoulder, trying to be a little bit better than the next guy. It's tough. It really is. Yeah. So my challenge always is to say, how do you reimagine your business or your business model or your offering so that it sets you entirely apart from the competition, so that no one else does what you do in the way you do it? So you create a category of one for your business where you don't compete. You see, it also becomes a mental thing. If you're competing with the next person, you're watching them and you're replicating that, hopefully as well. Yeah. You're not watching the future, seeing tomorrow's opportunities before they do, because you're watching them. You're too busy watching them. So, I mean, the concept in the future of global best practice is being challenged. You know, look at the car industry. Look at the SUVs down the street. They look 95% the same, right? They're all good quality. Even Land Rovers don't leak oil anymore. You know? They all look the same. So how do you set yourself apart? Well, along comes Elon Musk, and he designs an SUV, which I call the Angry Triangle. It's a really ugly-looking truck, but when you look at it, there's no one else like it. Oh, you may hate it.
I want it.
But my point exactly. It's distinctive, right? So you think about the business models, the marketplace of tomorrow, and then you say to yourself, in that world context, in that tomorrow's marketplace, with customers behaving in these ways, what is the ideal business I would like to have? And you design that. Don't be constrained by your present. Okay? That's business of today. Think about your business of tomorrow, unconstrained way. Design it. What's my offering to the market? What are customers saying about me, etc., etc. And then wake up in the morning and say, wow, this is an incredible business. Pretend it's 2030, right? Pat yourself on the back and say, I've done it. This business is real. And then you ask yourself the question, how did I do it? And you see, you're so excited intellectually and emotionally about this success that when you ask the question, how did I do it? Yes, of course, there were issues you had to face, challenges you had to overcome, cash you had to raise, whatever it is. But you're so excited by the feeling, the tangible feeling of that future success that you find creative ways to solve tomorrow's problems. But when you do a SWOT analysis, sitting in your business of today, and you say, what am I bad at? What can't I do? What are my constraints? And then you ask the question, what can I do? You've filtered out a lot of opportunity because your mind is already constrained. You see? So my advice is when you're trying to build relevance as an entrepreneur is, yes, you've got to operate business of today. Of course you do. But you've also got to say to yourself, what's the destination you're aiming at? And am I doing the right things today so that my destination becomes more real?
More real. You once mentioned in one of your interviews that I watched that unless we grapple with the future and while solving today's problems, we might not know whether there's a future or not. I think that speaks to using the water that you have to put out fires for today, also planting seeds, watering seeds for tomorrow. I just saw in the news recently that Golden Arrows just announced that they are going to be replacing their 1,100 diesel buses with 60 electric buses every year.
Right.
So according to my calculation, that's going to take 18 years. 18 years for them to replace all of their buses right now. In our context, would you say that's an agile approach from them, considering that in the next 18 years, we might be having driverless, autonomous vehicles in Cape Town? Do
you think Santaco are ever going to agree to autonomous taxis? I'm not sure.
I mean, that's a conversation. I'm going to have a question for that just now. So
I would respond absolutely not. It's a little bit like, the South African government building a power station, a coal-fired power station now, that has a 30-year payback period, right? I mean, it's an insanity, right? We know that in the next 30 years, coal will disappear or it will be taxed to make it completely non-viable, right? So how do we then make a 30-year capex investment, knowing that somewhere in that time frame, maybe towards the end, but it's all going to be disrupted? Same with Golden Arrow. They know they have to convert from diesel engines into renewable energy mobility. Right now, that's electric vehicles. It comes with its own challenges in terms of power supply, et cetera, et cetera. But the shift towards renewable energy vehicles and electric vehicles is massive. It's happening around the world way faster than we expected. It's only Eskom here that's constraining us. There's no reason why our conversion rate shouldn't escalate dramatically. And we don't have 20 years to do it. It's going to happen somewhere in the next 5 to maybe 8 years.
8 years,
So the reason they're only doing 20 taxis or 20 buses a year is because they're looking at their cash flow. And they're saying, how do we finance it? How do we amortize, write off, if you like, depreciate the old diesel buses? And how do we afford to finance the new incoming electric buses? So, but that's a decision taken based on today's constraints and today's way of thinking. If they had to say to themselves, we are going to provide a massively efficient public transport service that's going to be future relevant, clean, contribute towards a better environment, etc., and by the way, cheaper, we need to do it way faster. They'll start thinking more creatively.
Yes.
I mean, a classic example is Richard Branson, right?
Yes.
He was insolvent when he started Virgin Air. He wanted to put television screens, movie screens in the back of economy seats.
Yes.
He went to the bank, he said, I need £100 million. They said, you can't afford it, your cash flow's bad. Right? So what did he do? He went to Boeing. He said, if I buy 30 new jets, will you put cinema screens in the back seats for me? They said, sure. So he financed it through Boeing.
Wow.
And he was the first airline to have movie screens in economy seats. But he thought about it differently. You know, yeah, I don't think you're replacing 20 buses a year over 20 years is agile. I think, you know, it's probably not even enough to stay relevant, let alone get ahead of the game.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. But I think that leads us to a different conversation. And the conversation is, in our context in South Africa, what role do you think regulations and institutions like Santaco will play in terms of preventing innovation from taking place in South Africa?
I'm going to take you back to the debates raging in South Africa pre-1994.
Yes.
Incredibly polarized. Little progress being made in terms of drafting the constitution. Until somebody asked the question, let's pause. Let's all write down what kind of country we want our children to grow up in.
Yes.
And suddenly, no matter where you were on the political spectrum, everybody had the same answer. There was alignment.
Yes.
The destination for the country was the same no matter what your views were about anything, right? There was alignment. There was a dream that people could buy into. And that was the breakthrough moment. Right now, 2023 in South Africa, we need a new social compact between the key constituencies of South African society with a new dream. We need to all collectively buy into the dream. Of course we're different. Of course there are different challenging issues. And of course, the biggest problem in South Africa right now is lack of trust. Trust between government and business, trust between society and government, trust between Santaco commuters even increasingly, and the rest of society. So there's a breakdown of trust. So how do we reignite a common dream, recognizing that the differences will always be there. They're never going to go away. But what can we actually agree on that's mutual? And let's focus our energy on delivering that. Let's then recognize the different roles that everyone could play in delivering that dream and accept that we will always be different in other areas. But as long as they don't destroy the common dream, then I think we've got a chance. And only through that process do I think we can start rebuilding trust.
That's going to be a long process, though.
But that's a shift in the social. The old social construct was, as a citizen, you pay your tax. The government provides, right? Provides roads, provides safety, education, healthcare, etc., and everyone else kind of operates that. Suddenly now you've got these community groupings. Santaco is one, religious groups or others in the South African context. Equally powerful lobby groups. Each now need to collectively agree what's the new deal. Because we pay taxes, but we get very little back for the taxes. So the social contract between government and society is broken. So what is the new one? But we're no longer just the only two players. There are other important players in the South African context. How do we bring them in and have a new social contract between 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the really important societal groupings? And there's got to be a new deal. And government's got to accept, they can't take the money in taxation and not deliver. What are they going to deliver? And you can't expect me to pay tax and pay for my education and my healthcare and my safety. So how do we split? There's only so many rands to go around. Definitely. How do we split it effectively?
Totally unrelated question. I think in South Africa, I'll ask you a question. What did we use in South Africa before candles?
Goodness, that's way beyond my time. Before candles, we sat in the dark, I suppose.
No.
Or the moon.
We used electricity.
Okay.
So my question is...
See, I'm used to my battery already, which
Say,
I paid for, the government didn't provide.
you see. So my question is, you have traveled the world. You
Yeah.
have experienced what the other countries have to offer. Unrelated question, why are you still here? Why are you still coming back here?
And I love this place. I cannot for the life of me. I mean, I had breakfast with a friend and colleague of mine this morning, and we asked exactly the same question. We're all going through friends, that are leaving or have left, etc. And I said to him, there is no better place on this planet in all my travels. Every time I land at Cape Town International Airport, I say, I'm home, and it's the best city in the world. We have a quality of life. We have a level of affordability. We have clean air. We don't have yet, touch wood, these massive environmental challenges that the rest of the world seems to be having. We've got a lot of other problems. Let's not make light about it. They're serious problems. They're deeply troubling problems. But I honestly believe that there are 68 million people in this country, and 60 million of them, at least, if not more, actually want to live together and create a better tomorrow together.
Wow.
Simple as that. We're being frustrated by the 6 or 7 or 8 million that are the bad guys. And they're bad because they're not doing their jobs. They're bad because they're corrupt. They're bad because they attack people and commit violent acts, etc., whatever. But it's the minority. The vast majority of South Africa actually want the same thing.
Wow.
From all spheres of life. And I'm not talking about one category or one group or etc. Everybody just wants the same thing.
Wow.
And if I look at South African history over the last 25 years, we've come back from the edge of the cliff time and time again.
Yeah.
And just read about what's happening on the political front in the last week. There's conversations happening that were unthinkable 6 months ago.
6 months ago, definitely.
Right?
That's true. Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether anything will come of them, but we're having them.
Yeah.
And, quantum physics tells us the mere act of observing an object changes its state.
Wow.
In Future World, we say the act of having a conversation about the future actually changes, subconsciously even, the next decision you take in your business.
Wow.
On anything. Whether it's about a person, about a product, a customer, the mere act that you thought about the day after tomorrow means you start seeing tomorrow or today differently. So the mere act that we've got this wide selection of people having a new conversation last week, even if it doesn't lead to anything specific, individually they will start taking different decisions.
Wow.
And I think that's going to have a positive outcome.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm going nowhere.
Kudos to you for actually looking for the positives when everybody else is pointing out the negatives about the country, and I think that's a great thing for you to do. I think that the idea of normality is absurd, and I think as humans we are so addicted to normality, and I think that this is birthed out of an unhealthy need for control and to limit uncertainty.
Yeah.
I think humans have been programmed in absolutes, black and white, right and wrong, left and right, first and last. It has to be absolute.
Yeah.
I think we struggle with this idea that two conflicting ideas can coexist.
Absolutely.
And it's this idea that uncertainty can both be risk and opportunity. And it depends with how we look at it. So my question for you is, how do we then go about creating new normals? How do we foster a culture of innovation in our businesses, in our country, to ensure that we are not getting comfortable in the normality, but we're actually embracing uncertainty?
I think the only reason that humans will survive as a species, I'm going to sound philosophical and dramatic, so we'll make it practical in a moment, is if we learn to thrive in uncertainty. I don't believe certainty is ever coming back. The last period of relative certainty I recall was pre the global financial crisis in 2008. And what's changed since then is the level of connectivity on the planet has escalated, and very soon all 8 billion people will be connected in the world.
Wow.
That's the single reason why all the change today seems so dramatic, and is very often. News travels instantly to 8 billion people. on whatever it is. Now we've got disruptive technology, we've got robots, we've got artificial intelligence, we've got shifting geopolitics, we've got shifting global economics, etc. We've got demographics in the world that are fundamentally changing the chess pieces on the board called life and humans. And so humans need to become brilliant at adapting and responding to friction. It's not going away.
Wow.
Robots love stability. Robots love predictability. Robots do things brilliantly that are repeatable with very little variation. Yeah. Let the robots do that. But then we as humans have to actually say, well, what makes us useful? Wow. Because doing repeatable processes or tasks that are routine, that don't require independent thought, that are normal, predictable, stable, etc., yeah, that's no longer going to be our domain. Our domain, therefore, has to be the unpredictable, yeah, the disruptive, the different. And we need to become good at that. Now, the problem is it starts at school. We're beaten to forget our natural born ability, yeah, to embrace anything that you throw at us. Wow. Right? We say, sit in a classroom in 25 desks in geometric patterns, and every 45 minutes change subjects. It's kind of crazy, yeah, right? Yeah, it's crazy. It's taking all of our inborn DNA to embrace the unknown. Wow. I mean, we embrace the unknown as a kid. We don't know how to walk. Yeah. We learn. We fall. We hurt ourselves. We stand up. We carry on. Yeah. You know. And then suddenly we start hammering ourselves. Don't do that. Don't walk there. Don't do this. Don't do that, etc. And I think we've got to reimagine what it means to be human, fundamentally.
Wow. That's really amazing. That's an amazing response. I'm going to ask you, I want to play a game with you.
Sure. The
game we're going to play is called The Future in 2030. Okay. And maybe 2030 is 7 years from now.
Very close by.
It's very close by. Should we play 2030 or 2040?
Let's do 2040.
2040, yeah. So we're going to go across...
I'll still be young by then.
Yeah, you'll be only 30. It's okay. I think that I'll give you an industry, a sector. You tell me what that world will look like.
Might look like.
I
won't say what it will look like.
No predictability. Might look like in the next 13 or 17 years.
Yeah.
Let's start with education.
Yeah.
What is the future of education?
We've stopped teaching subjects in vertical silos. We have started teaching young children at a very early age about systems theory, systems thinking, the interrelatedness between things. So we will do what Sweden was doing way back in 2020, where they started teaching subjects like coffee shop management.
Wow.
And if you do coffee shop management as a subject at school, you have to know, well, where do coffee beans grow? That's geography. How to optimize the yield of your coffee bean plant, that is biology. Wow. And nature. How do you price your coffee to make a profit? That's maths. How do you sell the coffee? Well, that's psychology and language maybe, and so on. And so you understand the interrelatedness between all these things. Wow. So we will teach in themes. There will no longer be age-related grades determined by your home affairs date of birth. Yes. There will simply be individual progress bands, which are so your learning is calibrated by your personal progress, not by the common average of 20 other totally unrelated kids in a group because of, put together because of age. Wow. So some kids will progress faster, others will progress slower. That's entirely up to the child. And the system will accommodate all of that. And we will focus on teaching skills that are relevant in a world of mass automation and absolutely ubiquitous artificial intelligence.
Wow. That's a very exciting future.
Yeah.
Exciting but scary,
yeah,
future. And where does STEM fit into this?
STEM will be a basic entry ticket to the game. I mean, we don't need STEM skills for STEM's sake because we will have smart computers. Maybe even computer chips embedded in our brain by 2040. So humans will be augmented by then. But STEM skills to understand the capabilities of an algorithm, the capabilities of a line of code. We won't need to learn how to code. Wow. Already in 2023, 65% of Java code on GitHub is actually written by AI.
Wow.
So, but STEM skills will be just a basic thing that we need to learn. It's like Latin. I did Latin way back when. it's of no academic value to me now other than it trained my brain to think logically in a certain pattern.
Yes.
That's it. What's also interesting about STEM is Google, who only employs very high-level STEM graduates, actually finds that some teams outperform other teams. And the difference is teams with an A in STEM, which became STEAM.
Wow.
And the A is the arts.
Wow.
And if you unpack the arts in a bit more detail, you'll see it's teams that have trust, empathy, collaboration, sharing, vulnerability.
Wow.
Those virtues in the STEM teams actually allow the team to completely outperform.
Wow.
Again, it comes back to my world about humans. Let the machines do the STEM stuff, but the human stuff with the A, the empathy, the collaboration, the sharing, the trust, that's going to come from human beings.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. So with urbanization, more people moving to cities, what is the future of transportation going to look like? Where you have at least 15 million people living in townships in South Africa.
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous amount of people. What does the future of transportation look like?
I think there are two dimensions to it. The one dimension is I think transport will be mass transport driven. I mean, the concept of, I don't know how many taxis in Cape Town on any given weekday, but it's got to be thousands. Conceptually, that's an insanity, right? I mean, the traffic light system can't handle it. Peak hour can't handle it. You can't build more and more wider roads. I mean, in China now, they've got 7 lanes in one direction and they have 14-hour traffic jams. I mean, it's insanity. So the world has to shift. Cape Town, South Africa has to shift to very reliable, efficient mass transportation systems. So that's one. That starts changing urban design. But I think urban design also, particularly post-COVID, when we've learned that you don't have to travel from A to B to be economically relevant in certain businesses and professions, obviously. But I think how we can work will change urban design. And I think the corollary to mass transport is that we probably should design cities where you don't have to travel far from A to B.
Wow.
The biggest spatial problem in South Africa post-apartheid is, black people were put far out, economic opportunities were in different places. It's kind of crazy. So new urban design says, how do we integrate where people live with economic opportunities for that community?
Wow.
And then how do we redesign cities? So it'll be a combination of mass transport, complete redesign of urban environments where there's no need to travel very far every single day. And then where you do need to, there'll be different transport systems.
Wow. So this idea of...
We can't extrapolate. We can't extrapolate the size of Cape Town suburbs on a 20-year view saying we are 6 million people in Greater Cape Town today. We're going to be 12 million people. Therefore, we have to double up the current design of infrastructure. It's just not going to work. The mountains are going to get in the way anyway. And the ocean. So how do we reimagine that?
Yeah. So then the idea of special township economic zones.
Yes.
Where you build special economic hubs in the lesser privileged areas so that people don't have to travel 3 hours or 2 hours to get to a CBD for work. Will that be...
I mean, it's going to be one of the things that we have to look at, right? Again, there's no quick fix solution. There's obviously massive capital involved. There's significant leadership involved, courage involved, vulnerability about making some really tough decisions. That's what makes it so difficult to go and execute. But if I look elsewhere around the world in businesses, courageous leaders that take big decisions with vulnerability and courage to execute them, they're the ones that cause change. And that's what we've got to embrace. And this is not a slow, linear progression. We've got to take some quite big, bold decisions early on. They won't be perfect, but we've got to take them. Otherwise, we're just going to trundle down this road, and we're not solving the problem at the moment. Even Ray Avea has been a great addition, but it's come nowhere near to solving the mass transport challenge. So you've got to integrate different solutions for mass transport. We've got to look at what are those big levers we can pull to change the economy of call them less affluent areas. Yes, they may still want to travel into the city because they're working as a barista in a coffee shop in Cliff Street. That's fine. Then we've got to provide a better infrastructure to do that. But you also have to stimulate the economy closer to where people live. And it's an economy for, the people living out in Tableview, right? Why should they travel on that road into town every single day? It's just as crazy, you know. So the road's in a slightly better shape, and they're more individual occupied cars maybe than the Khayelitsha route, but it's the same concept.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Future of work, what would that look like? I think the questions to ask is, what is valuable work? How can we take intellectual property, whether in documents and in the minds of the people that are working for us, and productize that? How do we do that? What does the future of work look like?
So the future of work is going to be not dominated. One feature of the future of work is going to be automation of absolutely everything that can be.
That is scary.
It's very scary. But think about it like this. If you work in the accounts department of a big medical import company, it seems that you can steal $500 million and get away with it for a while.
Yeah.
Well, that's a crazy story, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. But if you think of someone working in the accounts department of a big corporation, what are they doing? They're matching up invoices. They're matching up bank statements. They're doing pretty repetitive, routine work.
Yeah.
Show me the individual in the accounts department that leaves work at 5 o'clock and is inspired by what they did that day in the accounts department. I don't think you'll find too many, right? Why do they do it? Because in 30 days' time, they've got to pay school fees and put food on the table, right? So they're not engaged. We are not unlocking the latent human potential in that individual. They're completing a process. Now, those processes will all be, and in my view, should be automated. So the question then is, how do we reimagine the role of the human to add value in a unique way that only humans can? And I'm going to come back to what are those human features that make us different from the clever robot. Think love, not a word you read about often in business, but think about serendipity, creating unexpected moments. Think about humor. Think about the pressure in your handshake. Think about that hug you give someone in the morning, right? And the value that can create. And I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, when I was running an investment firm, we had a conversation amongst all our people about what was the one thing we had to be distinctively brilliant at. The word was care.
Wow.
The ladies that made the tea in our meeting rooms, the lowest paid people in the company, thought about this. And one day I got a phone call from a client to say, Anton, the tea experience in your meeting room today was amazing.
Wow.
I don't quite know what it was. So I went down to the meeting room, the same tray, the same cup, the same linen, it was all there, it was all well selected, all fine. But what I noticed was there were flower petals sprinkled on the tea tray. And our tea ladies had said to themselves, how do we transform the process of drinking tea to an experience? And in their own minds, they had stolen flowers on the way to the office and sprinkled a few petals on each tea tray.
Wow.
The client, whose money we were managing, took the trouble to phone in and say, Anton, something magic happened. I don't know what it was, but thank you.
Wow.
What's the economic value of that? Now, computer's not going to do that, and robot's not going to do that.
Yeah.
The question for the business is, how do I recognize that, train for it, design procedures in the company to allow that to happen, so they don't have to steal flowers, we actually buy them for them.
Wow.
But how do we then recognize that moment of value in the form of a salary or recognition? And that's the big thing we've got to explore in business. How do we make humans do the special things that make an impact on other humans, i.e. the customers, in unique ways?
Wow.
That has its own set of IP around it. Then, of course, you've got to think about, again, what is the marketplace of tomorrow? What will be scarce? What will be abundant in the future? Well, technology will be abundant. Data will be abundant. No one pays a premium for anything that's abundant. Right? So what is scarce? Simplicity. Now, I go to my bank. I've banked with my bank for 35 years. I want to open up a new credit card. The first question is, what's your name? What's your address? Where do you live? Hey guys, you've done this for 30 years. You've sent me bank statements. Maybe you should go and simplify the process. So when I click, I want a new credit card, the bank writes to me saying, the form's completed, just sign it. Okay? Simple example, stupid example, but that's my point. So how do we reimagine those things that people will pay you a premium for? But so many companies just do the normal, right? My morning coffee shop at the local barista down the road. I go there Every single morning I ask for a flat white, they bring it to me in a glass. My next statement is, please can I have it in a cup? I'm a bit irritated. Before I take my first sip of coffee, I'll go down there every single morning, every day of the week for months. You think one day they can come in and say, hi Anton, here's your cup of flat white, not your glass of flat white. Okay.
Wow.
You know, now in that moment, value is created. The problem is the system doesn't differentiate in the price of the coffee or in the employee's salary.
Wow.
And that's what we've got to get better at.
Wow. Let's do two more. Let's look at the future of energy.
Yeah.
Let's look at the future of energy. Then when we're done, we can look at the future of... Okay, let's do the future of energy. Yeah.
Okay. So 17 years from now, coal-fired power stations is either out of business or it's taxed out of business because of the environmental concerns, and international sort of capital lending, capital markets are going to require a price for dirty industries. So that'll be irrelevant. I also think the days of a national energy generator and distributor are over. I think we will see the arrival of micro energy networks. In my neighborhood, everyone's got solar, batteries, etc. We will start sharing power with one another before we put them into the national or the city grid, if you like. So there'll be micro energy creation, micro energy transmission, which means we need new smart grids to price it, to trade, and to transfer energy value, from different players. So that'll be a whole different system. I think there's an even chance that in 17 years we'll see the start of fusion energy in the national energy mix, which means abundant, clean, and very low-cost energy from 17 years going forward into the future beyond that. So that's going to be really, really exciting. And I think energy should be abundant, And I mean, there was even an article I read that said in 20 years' time we will have mini nuclear reactors in every person's basement.
Wow.
So the concept of energy from this national grid, national generator, that's going to disappear.
Wow. Interesting. Future of banking. I think with blockchain technology, with all these new technologies that are coming up, what is the future of banking? Fun fact, do you know that I think South Africa is about 38% in the informal sector?
Yeah.
Most people actually still put money under the pillows and under the mattresses.
Yeah.
So what does the future of banking look like?
So the reason they put money under their mattresses is one, lack of trust. B, the processes in banking don't make it easy for them to join because there's too much friction. I mean, the banks charge fees that are completely unrelated to the cost of processing. Wow. And they're making a fortune. Right now, maybe in South Africa, there are impairments that are increasing because of interest rates, unemployment, and the slow growth in the economy. But all over the world, banks are making ridiculous profits, if you like, from charging for friction. Now, what blockchain does, what quantum computing is going to do, is eliminate the friction. So the question then is, so what will banks be able to charge for? I see a world, in 17 years from now where money will become intelligent. It will become digital, and everyone is hung up with cryptocurrencies. Crypto is just the start. But the concept of digital money as opposed to a credit card or a banknote will arrive, I think. And I think money will become intelligent and money will start talking back to us. Wow. When I want to spend money on a new underwater lens for my camera, my system, called my money system, is going to say, Anton, you're only 9 years away from retirement. The stock markets are running at this rate. Maybe if you divert the cash from an underwater lens into a new investment in 7 years, you'll be better off when you retire, etc. It'll be much more intelligent and much more customized for me. And it will be controlled by an independent, if you like, money system that I will own and control. And then we'll have the new systems like a blockchain. And again, there's no reason for most of the data in a bank being locked in different silos, of different operating divisions in a bank. I think those days will disappear. Today in South Africa, 2023, we're really struggling with know your client and anti-money laundering legislation, processes, documents. I mean, to open up a new bank account is becoming a real nightmare. I think that will all become much more automated.
Wow.
We will have a barcode that we will authorize people to access, and that will open up all the information they need. We won't have to go through this incredibly costly process, which, by the way, is creating enormous jobs. But again, it's creating jobs for people that are doing things that should be automated with a barcode. Monitored in real time. Think about China, 2022. WeChat. WeChat had over 1 million applications on their one platform, all integrated with a common data set, all interrogated by artificial intelligence and algorithms, to really understand the customer to the point where you can make a micro loan of $10 at 2 in the morning and you can settle it at 3:15 in the morning with no human intervention. That is real in 2023 in that part of the world. And I see that becoming, ubiquitous. And especially in Africa, where we need frictionless, affordable transactions that are safe from all the criminal elements out there. And we've got the technology to do it.
Wow. That's amazing. You basically live at the airport. Cape Town International Airport should give you shares because you basically live there. Most of the clients that you work with are clients that are outside of South Africa. Is that a strategic move? Why is that?
So in my business future world, a lot of the advisory work we do, the working with companies to help them build new businesses, that all is happening in South Africa with largely South African clients. My own part of the business is to change the way leaders think in businesses. And I've just built, over the last 20 years, a global client base. Slowly but surely, and never advertised once, it's all word of mouth. And I love going to new places. So when I get a phone call from Mexico, I'm on the next plane, or the Himalayas. I'm off there in a couple of weeks' time for a client. And so that part I love. I mean, my personal ambition is to change the way 1 million people think before I die. My business ambition is to help thousands of companies create new, future-relevant revenue streams that make a difference, that build a better society where all stakeholders actually say, thank you for doing that.
Wow.
That's what we try and do.
Wow. And where do you see Future World in the next 5 years?
I think it's my dream for Future World in 5 years is it's a conversation on every agenda in every boardroom.
Wow.
But if you think, we don't tell clients, we co-create with clients. We provoke, we challenge, and we change the kind of decisions clients themselves take because we push them to think differently. We invite them to think creatively about new and different ideas and opportunities. And it's an incredibly positive conversation. We never have a conversation around let's restructure, let's cut jobs, let's cut costs, let's remove the good coffee from the canteen. Absolutely not. Our conversation always is, how can we help you 2x, 3x, 4x your business? And we'll partner with you in doing that.
Wow.
And by the way, just sort of off the record, we give our clients a full money back guarantee. If you think we're not adding more value than our fees, we give the money back. That's it.
Wow.
Simple. We honestly believe in what we're doing is incredibly powerful.
Wow. Well, have you ever given back the money?
Not in 32 years.
Not in 32 years. Wow.
Yeah. Which again, if I think of the young people that work on our teams, really smart, bright, young South Africans, they're so excited about creating value that's beyond the expected that it's never let us down, and clients say, wow, I never thought we could do this or achieve that or think like this, because we pushed them, but we don't push them with a stick. We push them with an invitation to come and imagine the art of the possible.
Wow.
Let's go and reimagine Cape Town, Let's go and think about how this thing can be better together. Let's take your barista business, think about how we can, we don't operate in very small businesses, but that's the concept,
Wow.
I'll give you an example. We worked with a client that made mattresses. So what would a normal strategy process look like? It would look like, okay, so how do we optimize the production line? How do we cut the costs? What color can they be? Blah, 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 all of that. What's the spring design?
Yeah.
Our conversation with the client was, so what is one of the big things that people grapple with as they get older? It's sore back, bad sleep. So how do we then connect your smartwatch, which is measuring your sleep, together with your mattress, together with your physiotherapy, and actually how do we then dial all that in and come up with a bed that actually reacts real time to your body biometrics and etc. So it's a smart bed, okay? But it's a different conversation, And then you say, and then how do you link that into the entire health ecosystem? But then you're not a bed manufacturer. You're a sleep deliverer, or you're an energy creator, because people wake up with more energy in the morning.
Wow.
So when you think of your business as an energy creator business for humans, then you think beyond just optimizing a production line. Right? Now again, what choices you make is entirely up to you. What you choose to do with that conversation is entirely up to you.
Wow.
But let's have a different conversation.
Wow. You're speaking to 21-year-old Anton. What would you say to him? What are the 3 things you've learned that you would advise your 21-year-old self not to do or to do?
Not to do is spend as much money on motor cars. What to do is to never be complacent and never think that there's nothing more that I can do. There's always something else, there's always something different. So be curious, I've said that before. Be unbelievably energetic about your own career. Imagine yourself 5 years out, every 3 years. So design your own future 5 years out. Imagine the ideal Anton at 26. Do that again at 24. What's the ideal Anton at 29? In your own context. And then say to yourself, I did it. I am that Anton at 29. How did I do it? What were the skills I acquired? What were the people I met? What were the relationships I built? What were the new areas that I explored? What were the things that made me totally uncomfortable that I did? And do that. Execute that. So never be comfortable, always be curious, always imagine your ideal future 5 years out. And remember, the world owes you nothing.
Sure.
My dad taught that to me. The world owes me nothing. I grew up in a world where if you got a university degree as a lawyer, you had a reasonable expectation that you will work till 65, retire and go and play bowls. Those days are over.
Sure.
Retirement will disappear. So how do you constantly reimagine yourself? How do you constantly stay ahead of the skills that you've got that are becoming irrelevant? You know, take a filmmaker, take a company that makes commercials for the big silver screen down at the Ster-Kinekor. Those companies that didn't understand the shift towards this phone are out of business today.
Wow.
YouTube has to say, how do we compete with TikTok? TikTok's going to say, how do we compete with the next thing, right? So how do you constantly stay ahead of it? It's curiosity, it's drive, it's push, it's ambition. And it's always saying to yourself what lies over the horizon.
Wow.
You know.
That's really amazing. I do this thing in my interviews where I ask the guest to ask the next guest a question. And the previous guest asked you a question. I think it was Dion Chang. He said that the question for you is that, what are you going to do differently tomorrow that you were not doing before? In your life, in your business, what are the things that you're going to implement, change, that you're not doing before?
And that's really interesting to ask a person sort of my stage of life. You know, I've tried many things. What I'm definitely going to do is I am going to push through the pain barrier more and keep exercising. I've had 13 surgeries on my one foot. I've had a big spinal fusion, and so movement is not an easy thing. I'm going to force myself to move more. That's at a personal level. I think I want to think of new ways to get executives that I think that are overwhelmed with anxiety because of all the pressures in the world, and I'm talking globally now, overwhelmed with an anxiety around short-term performance and just the pace and the pressure that people live in, just to find some new creative ways of getting them to hit pause, breathe, I think. I told you I'm going scuba diving soon. I learned many years ago, if you don't breathe underwater, you die. I think business people are not breathing enough and not reflecting enough. So I'm going to find new, interesting, exciting ways of doing that. I think I definitely do want to have travel into parts of the world that I haven't been to before. So I've kind of done India 133 times already.
Wow.
I want to find a few new destinations, but go and explore other domains and learn from these other cultures. You know, what can I bring back that's useful here and vice versa? So I guess it's not doing something different because I've tried to always do that. Let me try and think of something a little bit more profound for you, maybe. I think it's just taking the pressure off performance. You know, it's saying tomorrow's coming. How do I maximize it? Yeah. There are 24 hours in a day. There 18 of those are awake hours. How am I going to use at least half of those to make some specific impact and be a bit more conscious of it? I think I certainly find myself sometimes being drawn into this wild process of, you know, catching flights, delivering engagements, preparing the next one, doing some admin, etc. I would like to be more conscious about how I spend at least half the hours of every day.
Wow. That's profound.
Yeah.
That's really profound. And what question would you have for the next guest?
What's your dream for people around you, and what can you do to make that dream come true?
Wow. What's your dream for
What's your dream for other people?
Wow.
And what can you do to make it come true?
Wow. What's your dream for people around you, and what can you do to make?
My dream for everyone around me is, how can I never have a negative conversation about South Africa around the dinner table?
Wow.
My first step is I'm going to stop inviting people that don't have positive conversations.
Wow.
I'm going to uninvite them. Because I think the positive conversations at times like this are tough anyway.
Wow.
So it's even tougher if there's someone around the room that always pulls you down. I just don't want them in my life anymore.
Wow.
This is where I'm going to live my future. And I want to find people that can collaborate and in some little way, in their own little way, 1 degree at a time, make it better tomorrow. That's my real dream.
I'm speechless right now, because that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really, really amazing. On a side note, you mentioned that you never had to do any advertising for yourself or your business. How did you manage to get the clients? How did you manage to put yourself out there? How did people know that there is Anton in Cape Town who is doing ABCD, and how can we collaborate, work with him? How did your name get out there?
I think, I mean, I like to, it's obviously, the obvious thing is to say, look, you always try and deliver fantastic work. But I think for me personally, it's been about energy and connecting with people. I love connecting with people. It's about making a real connection beyond the formal, if you like, product that you deliver on the day, making a real connection, and then connecting with people, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's in the old days exchanging business cards, you know, it's just connecting with people. But then more importantly, it's finding reasons to offer some value back to them before they expect value from you. And so building a global network of people that enjoy engaging with you, enjoy your work, find it valuable, and then they talk about you. And that's literally how we built it. I mean, it sounds trite to say, but it is just through that. I think it's also having the confidence to say no to certain things because they're not consistent with what I want to do, who I want to work with, where I want to go, etc. I think it's been difficult sometimes, and COVID was tough because you start questioning the value of your value. And in COVID, you know, many people that do what I do around the world, everyone cut costs, cut fees, and then suddenly post-COVID, people want to pay the same fees, and you've got to learn to say, I'm sorry, I know that I'm worth way more than that, and I'd actually rather just go for a walk in my garden than fly halfway around the world and earn a tiny bit of money. You know, it's having the confidence to do that in yourself is important.
Wow.
But really, it is just about connecting with people at an emotional level and an intellectual level, and leaving a mark. My favorite expression is, I've never thought of something like that, Anton. And then I know I've made a mark. And if that's the impact I make, then I'm happy. And I know that, I mean, I get client requests sometimes, you know, 5 years later. One of my biggest clients today came from a man who lived in London. He happened to be in Athens. He happened to be in the same hotel I was doing a keynote in. He walked past, heard the keynote, came up to me afterwards and said, I was just a hotel guest. I heard your keynote. I shouldn't have been there, but I did. I loved what you said. Can we have supper? I said, sure, we can have supper. he then said to me, will you do some work in India if I can introduce you? I said, I'd love to go there. Introduced me to a client in India. It's become my biggest global client now, 10, 12 years later. Chance meeting in a hotel in Athens.
Wow.
That's the serendipity of life. You've got to put yourself out there, do amazing stuff, talk to people unexpectedly, make an impact. Life will bring it back to you.
Wow.
And you've got to trust that.
Wow.
You know.
This is amazing.
But how do you get in touch with me? You know, it's
Yes.
Anton@futureworld.org or it's www.futureworld.org, and come and have a conversation about amazing futures and what we can do to create it together.
Definitely. So, parting thoughts, message to the world, message to South Africa, message to Africa, just parting thoughts. You can use that camera over there, then you can speak to the world.
Passing thoughts. The world is going through a fascinating era now. It's almost like the Control-Alt-Delete buttons we used to hit on our old Windows laptops 20 years ago to reboot the system. I think the world is being rebooted right now. So let's be conscious about the choices we make tomorrow to create a new operating system for ourselves, our families, our businesses, our friends, our colleagues, our country, our communities. A new system where we can all be inspired by tomorrow's dream, where we cannot be sidetracked by the short-term challenges of today, but that we can actually make slow and steady progress towards Society 5.0, one which is greener, which is healthier, which is happier, which embraces technology but doesn't allow technology to override the special things that make us uniquely human.
Thank you very much, Anton.
Great pleasure.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. You are a wealth of wisdom, a wealth of knowledge. I learned a lot from you today.
I talk too much sometimes.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So there you have it. A scary but exciting future. As Anton said, the only certainty is uncertainty. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.